Marie. Welcome to the show today.
Hey, what's up, Jason?
Nothing much, Marie. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Life is good, I think.
Life is good.
Life is good.
That's a good start. I mean, you're on my podcast, so life must be pretty good at this point.
Life has to be awesome. I'm talking to Jason.
Yeah, exactly. On a podcast with a bunch of listeners who will hear this episode soon. So of course it's going to be good. Well, I know we've got a lot to talk about today, so let's kick off and get right into it.
Yeah.
So first of all, Mary, why don't you let the audience know who you are, where you are in the world, and let us know anything you'd like to share with us.
Yeah. So my name is Marie Deveaux. I live in Brooklyn in New York. I'm from California, so I'm a transplant. And I'm a coach. I help people around public speaking and also like entrepreneur transitions, helping people jump when it's especially scary. That's kind of my bag. Let's see, I'm married. I have two awesome sauce kids, Ben and Ava. And what else? I feel like that's kind of where I'm at in the world right now. I don't know.
Cool. How do you define awesome sauce?
Oh, awesome. Like awesome sauce. It's like magic. It's like the thing that you taste. You're like, oh, what is that? What is that? And you don't know, but it's delicious. So you just get more and more of it. It's awesome.
That's great. That's great. I live in Brooklyn as well, as I've talked about on the show. So we're neighbors. We live in the same borough of 2 million people, but that's probably about as close to neighbors we're going to be.
Yeah, no, definitely not off the same train stop, not in the same neighborhood per se, but yeah, we share a borough.
Awesome. So how Marie and I met originally, Marie and I have met a couple times. It's an interesting little journey to today. So Marie used to work at a really cool public speaking training company. And I went to a public event. So public event is anybody can go. My company paid for it. And Marie was the trainer there along with 3 other people. So she was in front of the room doing all sorts of stuff. And I was one of 60 people. So I kind of met Marie and got to know Marie a little bit just from how she interacted with us. And she probably had no idea who I was. And then I think I introduced myself at the end because I knew one of the other trainers from a mutual friend of ours. And I think we did meet, but it wasn't any sort of connection. So you're like, I'm in a room, I'm tired, I just got done training 60 people. And I'm like, hey, this is cool. So that's the first time we met. And then as the universe would have it, Marie and I ended up in the same coaching program as I've talked about with a couple other people on the podcast. So I think we were on a Zoom meeting last fall or winter getting ready. And I'm like, wait, I know that person. I'm like, that's Marie from the company. And I'm like, oh, and she's a mutual friend of my friend Mary. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, hey, Marie, I don't know if you remember me, probably not, but we're in the program together. We're going to get to know each other really well. So then we've gotten to know each other in person through the program where we stare at each other for 16 hours a week, 16 hours a weekend.
So many hours.
And what's great about Marie and I is we share a lot of the same opinions on things.
So cynical.
So what I am very good at is being stoic. People one of our friends in the room calls, I look like Stanley from The Office, where I'm just like,
oh yeah, no expression, stone cold.
No expression. Marie is the epitome of a Michael Scott. There's no.
I can't hide anything.
No, she can't. Marie cannot hide anything. So when Marie is not feeling it, I'm like, damn. Yep. Marie's like my wife. There's zero hiding of feelings and emotions, and I'm like, yep. Mr. I could be super happy in the room or super annoyed, and it looks kind of the same.
Looks the same.
Which kind of drives people crazy.
It's maddening.
Which I also kind of like.
You're the hardest person to read. There's no telling what's going on in your brain. There's no telling.
Well, but that's what 20 years in corporate sales does to you. You're just got to be calm, cool, and collected.
Jeez.
So Marie and I have a bit of a journey, but here we are today. So this is the tradition on the show, Marie, is we get to tell each other about our first impressions of each other. And you and I have not talked about this. Mm-hmm. So, and because it's my show, I'm going to have you go first. What was your first impression of me?
Oh my, well, it's interesting because I don't remember you from the training where we did first meet. I remember I knew your name for sure because part of that training is you got to learn everyone's name. But after a couple of weeks, you forget all those names and you learn a whole bunch of other people's names. And then when you reached out to me after we realized we were in the same program, I was thinking, and I remembered your face. And I was like, oh, right. Because this guy looked kind of angry the whole time. Just because you have very distinct bone structure. And so your eyes always kind of look like you're scowling kind of. if that makes sense. So I'm like,
Yes.
oh, right. Like, but I remember you from the training being like, oh, but this guy was like super. I also recall that training. I think that was a training where there was a woman who made a lot of like interesting sexual innuendo
Yes,
throughout.
there was.
Right. And so, but I remember you being the guy who's like busting up laughing the whole time. So I'm like, oh, this guy looks really serious, but isn't.
Oh, I love
That was what I remembered. And then when we met in person, right, which we were both in the program, I was like, oh, and I saw you. I was like, oh, right, the guy who looks mean, but he's not. So that was like I'm like, oh, this is, yes, Jason. Because I remember that when we met in person, I gave you a big hug. It's like, oh, right, this guy is a prankster. And
yes. Oh,
you can't
total prankster.
tell because his face
Yeah.
lies to you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm actually one of the least serious people on the planet. What's super funny is our mutual friend in our program, Casey, who was on the show a few weeks ago. She said her first impression is that I was super Midwestern.
Oh, that's interesting. But she's from the Midwest.
She is. She's from Ohio. Well, but then she's like, I felt like you were super Midwestern, but then when I got to know you, you were super New York. I'm like, thank you. That's the best compliment you could ever pay me. So that is, oh my God, that's so good. I haven't had that feedback before. Yeah, we have such an interesting way that we met that it's like, that makes total sense. So lesson for the audience, if you ever meet me and I look mad, I'm probably not. So please like actually be like, hey, what's going on here? Because like, that's probably not what's going on. It's possible. If you're walking too slowly in front of me or wasting my time, then yes, I'm probably mad at you, but otherwise I'm probably not mad at you. That's really cool. So let me share with you my first impression. So I'll take the training first. You're like very graceful. I think you were a former dancer.
Yeah.
If I believe, or maybe you still dance. So you have a natural, like as you're speaking, I just remember you like being very graceful in your movement, which I consider myself very ungraceful in my movements, especially when I'm speaking. So I remember you being graceful. I'm also like, you're obviously very well trained. So I remember your voice like, oh, she knows how to, and it was a big room, like 50 or 60 people. You could talk to the back of the room, no problem. So I remember like, oh, powerful voice, powerful present, really graceful. And then when so that was my first impression. And also like you were literally performing, you're doing a scripted training for us. So it felt like a performance in a powerful way. And then when we met in person, I remember thinking like, oh, like she's the same person, only like in the real world. So like you're still, and not that you're always performing, but like you know how to carry your voice. Like somebody in the room's like, hey, Marie, speak up. You're like, bah! Like it's like boom. Like you know how to, like all the skills you have. And somebody who just naturally comes in the room, you're like, that's a person who knows what they want, what they're about. And if you're happy, you're smiling. And if you're not happy, then I'm like, whoa, like that, what's going on here? Like I might stay away and let somebody else deal with it.
Wow.
I might not get to know with her, but yeah, so that was my first impression of you.
That's so funny. You know, it's interesting. I get that a lot. Mm-hmm. That people tend to get fearful.
I've heard that about you from a couple of our teammates. And I'm sure you probably talked to them about that as well. Which the funny thing is, I never get that from anybody in our team. What everybody says is like, oh, you're really friendly, but I'm scared of you because I think you're just impressive. Like, you know how to do stuff, or you have all this knowledge. And I'm like, I don't really have knowledge. I'm just not afraid to like show up.
Right.
Or then you get done. Like, I think where one of the reasons you and I get along so well is you're another person, you just know how to show up. Like, even when you don't want to, even when you're tired or, you're dealing with stuff at home, you still show up and do the work and like continue on with the things you need to do. Cause you're another person who's extremely driven like I am. And I think it's like a bond we have is like, we're both like the people in the room that are like, yeah, I don't feel like we're going to do it anyway. Versus a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't feel like it. So I'm just not going to do it. I'm like, so what are you going to do instead? And they're like,
right.
Nothing. Like, okay.
Yeah. Doesn't really compute for me.
Yeah. Results. I'm sure we'll talk about this during our time today. Well, thanks for sharing that. That was really fun to hear. That was hilarious. I'm still laughing and I'm smiling. So
but has anyone ever given you that feedback before? Like your bones, you just look like you're scowling, but you're not. Like you just have a very serious looking face.
My friend Anna, who's a mutual friend, said one of the funniest things I've ever heard. She said your RBF is a gift that your mom has passed down to you. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, totally. That's a Frizzell lineage thing. Yeah. Hey, you can only work with what you got. So maybe I just got to focus on like a weird fake smile all the time. No, maybe not. That would just be creepy. All right, Marie. So let's get into it today. So First question for you. What's something that you nerd out about?
Oh, wow. I love positive psychology and like digging in on like how the brain works and how that shows up for people. I think it's it's really interesting just looking at how for all of us it's all based on like all of our animal instincts and how that shows up then in the real world and social interactions. I think that stuff is kind of crazy. Um yeah. So I would say that. Um yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to ask you a question about that now, if that's all you got for me.
That's all I got.
Um,
That's all I got. I'm like
that's
positive
perfect.
psychology.
So I don't know what positive psychology means. Can you define like what that actually means?
Yeah. So it was like the study of yes, psychology, but a lot of like neuroscience and like how our brains work and how
Mm.
so much of what we think shows up in our everyday life, right? So how we think actually creates and structures our reality. So looking at things like, for example, like The Secret, which is like kind of like I think the hallmark of this concept or this ideology is that we are able to create our reality, like mind over matter, and
Mm-hmm.
looking at how us being in control of our brain and control of our emotions enables us to actually control everything else in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Is that where? Are you familiar with the model? It's a coaching thing.
Oh
Um,
no, what do you mean by that?
yeah, so it's called. I heard of it first. Brooke Castillo's Life Coach School. It's
Mm,
where Stacey Bayman came from as well. So the model is the idea, and I might get this wrong. Circumstances happen,
hmm
and they're neutral. So it's just neutral what happens, and circumstances happen, which affects. You have thoughts about those circumstances, and then you have feelings about those circumstances, and then based on those feelings, you do actions based on those circumstances, which can sometimes be do nothing, and
Yep.
those actions create your results.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of like the basis of like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
being able to examine your reaction to things. And that once you can kind of shift your reactions or the impressions that you have about different things that are happening, that actually changes your results,
Okay.
which is like everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I don't think I'm going to let you off the hook here.
No.
Nah, I don't think so. Well, do you want to be off the hook?
Well, what else you got?
Well, I know that you're a big Marvel nerd, so maybe we could talk for a minute about that.
I am a bit of a Marvel nerd. I just think like the Marvel franchise is a perfect like microcosm for pretty much everyone and everything in life. That's all. And it's like helped me a lot, like in terms of like looking at life. If you actually look at it like through the lens of a Marvel movie, everything makes a lot more sense. Um, I think most people are like trying to do like amazing things in their lives and don't recognize like
Mm-hmm.
their own inner superhero. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of like opportunity there. Um, Also like um, especially like being a coach, like it's really easy to see a lot of the parallels between how superheroes move and how real people, everyday people move through their lives.
Yeah.
Um, and like the capacity for and need for teamwork, the need for leveraging each other's strengths, the need for appreciating all the things that are different about us, because that's actually like the stuff that makes us really cool and powerful. Like superheroes are how people should be thinking about themselves. And I don't know why more people don't.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you and I have had this conversation. Have you decided who your model is if you had to pick one in the MCU?
Oh, we talked about this a little bit. And I don't know, I feel like I go back and forth a lot. I like to think, so I'm going to answer a different question because
Yeah. Sounds
so
great.
growing up, I feel like my favorite Marvel character was Rogue because she's like the
Mm-hmm.
Southern Belle, but like ultra badass, like, right. She flies and she like punches people through walls and like, she's like amazing. And she can't ever like get close to somebody
Mm.
because she's not
Mm.
like, right. Like the sheer, like her sheer touch will like completely debilitate someone.
Right.
So she has to wear gloves. Like she's like blocked off from the rest of the world, but she's like immensely powerful, like on her own. Which I don't know if you see anything of that in me, but like, that's like totally
No.
like, that's
I,
like my
I
jam. Uh,
no. No. I know nothing about that.
Lies. But like, and a lot of like how I identify with Rogue is because she is so fiercely independent. And also like, that's part of like the shade for her is like always being separate and not being able to connect. Um,
Yep.
so having that balance of like independence and community and trying to leverage that, the vulnerability and like the headstrongness, as kind of like her duality, I think is really powerful.
Yeah. So it's like having this immense power to change the world but doing it by yourself.
Right. Like always having to do it by yourself, can't get close to people, inability to connect. Right. And so is kind of always like lonely in her power.
Yeah. I think we talked, mine is just so easy. Anybody that knows me is like, I'm such a Tony Stark. I'm like, I want a Jarvis. I want to be able to wake up in the morning. Like people are like, I'm afraid of technology. I'm like, no, I literally want to do nothing and scream at a robot and have it do everything for me. So like what I love about Tony is he's actually not a superhero in any way other than he's really smart, which I wish I was as smart as him. He's extremely rich, which I wish I was extremely rich. And he just uses like sarcasm and wit to like build cool stuff and then fly around and like, but he doesn't have any superpowers at all. He's kind of like Bruce Wayne. He has no actual
he's
superpowers.
just brilliant. He's just brilliant and like good with gadgets. Which is
which
like
I'm, it's kind of my thing. So,
but it's interesting because, but those things are like tremendous resources, right? Like people who have a lot of money and like superior intelligence definitely have like an advantage over the rest of us. So,
rest in peace, Tony. Oh, sorry. Hope I didn't ruin Endgame for the audience.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
It came out in the summer. If you haven't seen it by now, you're not going to see it. Let's be clear.
Maybe, well, just, in the show notes, just let people know if they haven't finished watching the Marvel franchise, they need to get on that. There are spoiler alerts in this episode. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. We'll probably go back to this again. So maybe at our next coaching weekend, I'll wear an Infinity Gauntlet and I'll just snap when I'm getting really annoyed.
Oh my God. That would be amazing. That would be cool. I wish so many things. That would be amazing.
Be like, you know what, guys? Instead of the claps that we do to configure, I'll be like, guys, are we done?
Oh, but you know what? But you're going to have to learn how to snap for real, Jason.
That's true.
And then this like mime snapping that you do. Did I just out you on your own podcast?
Oh my God.
Marie, I hope that stays in. I hope that stays in.
No, it will. It will. Marie, okay, we've never talked about this before on this podcast. So Marie just outed me. I literally can't snap my fingers. Don't know how to do it. I try, and so when we snap our fingers, I fake it. Like it looks good, but it's not actually making a sound.
It's a lot of fingers flailing. It's amazing to behold.
It's
very
really terrible.
Enthusiastic, energy all over the place, but no sound.
There's no sound. It's if it was a skill that I actually cared about, I might learn to do it, but
it's not worth your time.
No. The opposite side of that is I'm like a really good whistler. I can whistle tunes and carry tunes up and down, and like I can listen because I'm a musician, so I can listen to songs and usually whistle like the exact song.
Wait, you're a what kind of musician are you, Jason? How do I not know this about you?
I play guitar.
Oh, did I know? I feel like I did not know this.
You may not know this.
Like acoustic?
I play acoustic. I have electric guitars. I play guitar.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You want to talk about the 7 modes of music? Like this is a hidden thing that so Kirsten, my wife, is going to interview me on this show soon.
Yeah.
And these will be things that like I will like reveal. Yeah, nobody knows. Like I know like quite a bit about music theory, and like I don't write, but I can play most songs.
That's amazing. Musicians are fascinating to me because it totally is a different language.
Yeah.
And like I would love to be a musician, and I'm not good at it. Like I did I feel like everyone takes piano. I took piano for a long time. I would never practice, so I didn't get any better. And then I quit piano. But that's amazing.
Yeah. So you learn. So the audience learned that I can't snap, which is true, totally true. We're not truth or two truths and a lie. That is the truth. Yep. And yes, and I play guitar. So I have not shared that. So thank you. I might actually just turn the reins over to you, and you could just ask me a bunch of. No, you will get to ask me something later. So Marie, back to you because I don't like to focus on me here.
Oh yeah, sorry. Are you uncomfortable now?
No, I kind of do. I actually kind of do, but. So let's move on to the next question. Actually, speaking of things that we like doing and not doing, what's something that is inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's comfort zone? And I like to caveat this for people and not let them off the hook. You can't say like getting up and speaking in front of people since you've literally have already talked about how you did that in front of 60 people.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you dig a little bit deeper than that because that was just too easy.
That was a softball. That's like my go-to answer. I'm like, yeah, public speaking is easy. Other things that are easy for me are doing the things that other people don't want to do. I, luckily for me, or maybe unluckily, I don't know, but I've been in like leadership training programs since like the 7th grade. So being the person who like raises their hand is something that has been like acculturated into me from a very young age. Like I also worked in operations for a long time. And the whole theme of working in ops is if there's a problem, then it's yours to fix. So like, that's something that is very comfortable for me, like leaning into seeing the problems, being like, oh, I can fix it. Let me find a solution. that kind of energy, which I found a lot of people struggle with for whatever reason of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be the person. Like I have no issue being the person
Yeah.
until I'm the person all the time. And then I get resentful and I'm like,
Yeah.
heck is no one else being the person. Um,
Yes.
but is not something that brings me like any discomfort. Like it's kind of
Oh,
my go-to MO.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So let's reverse the question now. So it's something that is outside your comfort zone that might be inside somebody else's.
Feelings. Basically like all the heart-centered, mushy, gushy stuff. I don't like them. Those who know me, I often refer to feelings as gross or disgusting. Somewhat in jest, but also because I don't like them. And it's true. Like I'm like rogue. Remember rogue? Like feelings
Yeah.
are
You don't need
hard,
anybody.
right? I
Yeah.
don't need
You're good.
anybody. And like feelings
You're
are
good.
hard. Feelings are where people get complicated. If people didn't have feelings, how easy would the world be?
Oh, B. I mean, you and I are liking this. I'm the same way. And one of the people on our team who's all feelings all the time, and it's not the person we're thinking of, it's another person, said to me, she's like, why can't you just be more emotional in the room? And I said, well, I'll be more emotional when you just become less emotional. And she's like, oh, I get it. I'm like, literally, it's just not a thing I do. Like, it's just not
Right.
how I operate. Just like you can't turn off the things that you have.
Right. People are
I can't
different.
pretend, right? I can't, like Anna said to me, she's like, I'm going to make you cry. I'm like, no, like, I, no, like, I'm just not, it's just not my thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe at
People
some
are
point.
different. It's
Yeah.
it's interesting though, because like also I feel like this year, especially really exploring what it means to like process emotion. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like especially as coaches, we spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, if clients show up with emotion, unhealed trauma, things like that, like you can't coach on top of it.
That's
And
right.
so for all humans, like we have to kind of figure out, well, what do I do with my emotions? Because you got to do something with them.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting because all of us do different things with the
Mm-hmm.
feelings.
Yeah. So something that just popped into my mind is you're obviously a parent. I'm a parent.
Yeah.
How does that go for you and your parenting? Because I feel like parenting is not really, there's a lot of emotion in parenting, either the frustration, the joy, the love. And then like we have a almost 4-year old and we're working on
Hmm.
her on, we'll say like, hey, tell us your feelings. What are you feeling? As opposed to like, swinging her fist. We know that she's mad,
Right.
but like, what are you upset about? How have you balanced like, being a little more stoic, which is I'm the same way, with
Hmm.
also like letting your kids, because kids just have feelings, right? Like
Right.
kids just have feelings. How do you balance that? And then since you're married, is your husband more on the feeling side and that's how you balance each other out, or how does that work?
Oh, that's really interesting because to answer like the last question first, yes, my husband is much more of a feeler than I am. He's definitely
Mm-hmm.
hard on his sleeve kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And is really good at expressing his feelings. It's actually brought up some interesting like gender dynamics in our house because it's like, oh, in a typical like, heteronormative relationship, the woman has all the feelings and the guy is going to be stoic. And like, we kind of have this interesting inverse in how we show up where like, I'm really good at like holding back the feelings and I'm very like task oriented where he is much more people oriented and likes to express. So it's kind of great that we work that way and operate that way.
Yeah. You
Um,
probably are attracted to each other for that specific reason.
oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's like a whole other story. But like, I don't know if we have time for that on this show. But
Okay.
like,
Next
but
time.
next time. But there is something to that of like finding that balance in your partner. I think with raising kids, me learning what I do with my feelings has become more and more present to me because to your point, like kids haven't developed that filter of like not expressing feelings openly. So like the stuff comes
Mm-hmm.
up and it comes out right away. Like there's no, maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't hear, maybe it's not appropriate. We're in a grocery store. Nope. Like just the feelings come out. And for myself recognizing, oh, the only reason I don't do that is because it's been like acculturated out of me or like I've been socialized not to do that. So allowing them that space has been really interesting and also like owning it in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. Like if, um, if my daughter is sad, which my daughter is quite the feeler, she's like our
Mm-hmm.
little I swear, like my daughter is like the reincarnation of like Lisa Bonet. Like she is like an art. Like I'm telling you, like my daughter will take old balloons and make swimsuits for her dolls and paint them.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
she also like cries for the fallen leaves in the autumn. Like she is like
Wow.
super porous, right? So when she's having her feelings, I'm really cognizant of like, oh, she's allowed to have her feelings, and being able to articulate that for her and be like, oh, it's okay to feel sad. How are you feeling right now? When she's crying for the leaves, oh, it's okay to cry for the leaves. How are you feeling for the leaves? And getting into that conversation, which is not necessarily comfortable for me, but
Yeah.
also recognizing that it is a totally normal human thing to express feelings. And being able to name the feelings, have vocabulary around your feelings is actually really powerful, and a
Yeah.
way for us to like access how we show up in the world in a different way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of cool to be a parent because you get to look at
Yeah.
your stuff through someone else's eyes.
Yeah. Through your spawn, then you're like, oh my God, that's so me. Like
Through the
there's
spawn, yeah.
me. Yeah. There's me. There's my husband, or there's my wife. Like there's me.
There's
Ooh,
me.
I don't know. That's not the good part of me. Like, ooh, yeah, I see that.
Right. It's all of it. It's all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So on the topic of public speaking, you have 5 minutes to deliver a speech to the world. What would you give your speech on, and why?
It's the whole world.
The whole world. You get to live stream it. You get to record it. You get to be on a big stage. Yeah. Everybody gets to see it.
And so it's like translated into like a bunch of languages.
I love the logistics and the technical details behind this, Marie.
Like, how is this happening? Where is this? What time is it?
I love this.
Awake?
I love looking for the possibility that maybe this is just possible. Let me rephrase. Ignoring the laws of physics,
time and space,
and the fact that there are many people in this world who literally don't have internet access.
Oh my gosh.
Fine. You have 5 minutes to deliver a speech to the United States.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
That changes everything, by the way. Jeez.
I kind of want both answers now.
Oh my God. Well, if it's the United States, it's going to be an angry speech. Because God, so much stupidity and so little time. Like, I don't know, like very frustrating. Also, I think, okay, so 5 minutes, it's probably going to be a speech about accountability and something around the lines of like, I am my brother's keeper. That is probably what I'm going with.
Love it.
There is no time like the present to stand up for yourself and what you believe. And if you allow your brother to be like slapped across the face, that's on you. Yeah.
I love it. I had another guest with something similar to that as well. This has actually been really fun to ask people because it's been a very wide-ranging thing. You are the first person to ask me the technical details of the like the logistics of how this is actually technically possible, which is something I would do, which is hilarious because I'd be like,
come on.
Does everybody have like a translation thing like at the UN? Does everybody have a translator?
Right. You need a lot of staff to pull off something like that, right? You're going to have to hire a lot of translators. The tech needs to be on point. People are going to have to be standing by. The delay just broadcasting to that many people. Like, come on.
All right. I should have rephrased this to one of my favorite coaching phrases. From magic and possibility.
Oh, God. If one more person tells me from magic and possibility, come on.
As you guys could tell already, Marie and I are very similar in many ways.
The cynicism is strong. It's very strong.
And also, I got to know the deets, because we got to make it happen. Like,
right.
Magic and possibility doesn't make anything work.
I am always interested in the how.
Yeah,
I'm always interested in the how. Yeah.
Lots of strategies, lots of assessment, which we get called out for all the time.
All the time. So, and there's a lot of value for people like us.
Yes.
Right. We help support a world where magic and possibility is possible.
Yeah, it's probably right. And maybe that works for some people. I'm a magic and possibility person coupled with a lot of strategies and hows behind it.
Right. Well, what do they say? There's that phrase like a vision without a plan is just a wish.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the part of the show where you get to share your journey to how, it's nearing the end of 2019. Mm-hmm. And you really, Marie, can share with us anything you'd like about your life, your work, your family, anything that you'd like to share with the audience. This is your chance to do that.
Oh, wow.
Small question.
Well, yes.
Narrow.
Very. Well, because you could go anywhere with this question.
That's the whole point.
Like, oh, this is so interesting. Well, so you mentioned when you met me, noticing like that I was graceful. Like I wanted to be a dancer when I was little. Like that was my go-to. When people ask the question of children, like, what do you want to be when they grow up? Um, for a while, one, that is an unfair question to ask a child.
Yes.
It's completely absurd. And for a long time, the way I answered that question was a lawyer or a police officer, because I thought that's what people wanted children to say. But growing up, right? Like, sure, one of those things, which turns out I don't want to be either one of those things at all. But once I started like getting into dance, that was like the thing that I thought I was really going to do. Like, clicked for me, like feels really good. And I don't know, I feel like everyone has maybe something or an activity or thing that they do where it just like feels really good in your body. And you're like, oh, this is amazing. Right. And so dance was that thing for me for a really long time. And then I had back surgery at like 13. And it was for scoliosis. And so literally, and who knows, maybe this is part of why I relate to superheroes so much, but literally I have a stainless steel spine. There's a couple of rods that are like screwed to my spine, keeping it straight. So I have like very little mobility in like the upper parts of my spine. And yeah, it's kind of a cool story to tell. It also makes it really hard to be like a modern dancer when you have like no flexibility in your back. And so kind of gave up on that dream. And at the time it was heartbreaking at like 13 to be like, this thing that I was certain was like my thing wasn't my thing. And for me, that was like, oh my God, God's a liar. Because why the hell would you put this in me and have it not be accessible? And so my next go-to was writing. And I was an English major in college. I was on the school newspaper coming up. I went to a communications magnet high school. So did a lot of writing. And when I got to college, it's interesting, again, like asking people what they want to be really at any point in their life is, I think, an unfair question. It's like, well, what do you want to major in? I don't know. And I don't know what kind of high school you went to, but like half the stuff that's accessible to you in college is not available in high school.
Totally.
Like linguistics. Did anyone have a linguistics class in high school to have any idea that that was a thing? No. Right? There's like, there's like tons of things you could study. No one knows what any of them are. And then we ask these like 17-year-old children, what do you want to do with your life for the rest of your life? Yeah. That is a ridiculous question. I feel like most 40-year-olds I know still don't know the answer to that question. So let's be realistic.
True story.
Right? So
work in progress.
In progress, right? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'll ask me again in like 40 years. So, right. But I was an English major. I mostly chose English because it was the thing that I could stand to take, 20 classes in, right? Because that's what a major is. So I'm like, oh, I could take 20 English classes, writing classes. I could do that. Finished in 3 years because I went to NYU and paid for it myself.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
How did you pay for it yourself?
Well, mostly, so first year was all scholarships. Most of freshman year was scholarships. My sophomore year, I worked and then I had to take out student loans. And then my junior year, which was also my senior year, was mostly student loans. And then I was done. But I never took a break. Like I took summer session every year. I went straight through in order to get my credits. I had exactly the number of credits you needed to graduate when I graduated.
None of this surprises me at all, by the way.
Well, unlike you have a problem and you figure out how to get it done. So is as efficiently as possible. Yeah,
with the least amount of money as possible.
Yeah. Zero waste. But yeah, I was the kid who was sitting in her freshman dorm mapping out the next 3 years, making sure I had the class schedules laid out so everything would line up, right? And then you get out of college, and I thought, and I went to NYU. I had a lot of friends who were in the business school in Stern. I was not in Stern, clearly. But like my impression of people who went to business school was that they were selfish, self-serving people, and they only cared about making money. And so I got out of school and I joined AmeriCorps and made a whopping $21,000 a year my first year out of getting a bachelor's degree at NYU. And I always tell anyone who's done AmeriCorps or has done Peace Corps will all tell you the same thing, is that's like the worst and the best year or years of your life. Yeah. because it's really challenging, but it's the kind of challenging where you come out knowing more about yourself on the other side.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of ways I feel like is also like going through like a coach certification program.
Totally. Totally.
Right? Like you find all of this stuff about yourself. But did that. And the thing that I got really clear about working for like peanuts, that year was crazy. Like my car got stolen that year and then returned. My identity got stolen. And there were like all these people like buying apartments in my name. Like it was a ridiculous year, not to mention like I had no money and I was working, 70, 80 hours a week in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is just outside DC. It's like, right. Like not a good area. And after that year, my conclusion was one, I cannot survive on 20 grand a year. Two, nonprofits can be doing amazing work. And if they don't know how to manage their money and fund it, it's kind of like a non-starter. Like, you have to actually have something sustainable in order to do good work, which was kind of the beginning of my shift around like money and my relationship to money. Coming out of that year, I then did a Robert Allen creative real estate class, moved back to New York, bought 2 investment properties in Philadelphia, and got another job, not nonprofit, but also not making a lot of money, but started really thinking about what it is around understanding money that tends to hold a lot of well-intentioned people back. Started looking into investing, did a lot of self-education around understanding money. So read Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor, which if you've seen it is like, it's like a Bible. But Benjamin Graham is the guy who like taught Warren Buffett like everything he knows. So if you want to understand money, go to like the source, right? Read that book. And came back to New York, started working, really found myself still working in like a youth education space, which was what I did for AmeriCorps, and started building this career around education management and teaching people how to educate kids kind of en masse, run education centers. That was really my introduction into management. And then because I was so used to working multiple jobs, because I was broke all the time, I was working a management job. And then I also got into an MLM. I did Primerica, which is like a financial services MLM. And they paid for me to get all of my investment licenses. So I'm actually a fully licensed investment advisor. Right? Which is like, I tell people, I'm like, yeah, not the best side hustle. Try to pick something that's not like federally regulated. Like it's such a pain in the ass to maintain. Like, oh my God. Like so much CE and like, why do I need to know about annuities right now? But like, keeps me still learning and understanding money and how it works in a really relevant way. Right.
Yeah,
like
it's awesome.
So did that kind of along the way as I was like building my career. And then finally, right before I became a coach, I worked for a large charter school network here in New York. Again, really kind of at the time when I had gone to work for them, I was looking to get into development. I thought I was going to start doing grant writing because it seemed like perfect, right? I'm a writer. I care about money. I care about nonprofits. I should be a grant writer. Turns out you can't be a grant writer. Like no one's going to hire you unless you've already acquired like hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants. It's like no one's going to teach you to be a grant writer.
So how do you start?
You either have to like know somebody who's doing it or teach yourself by just writing grants for like an existing nonprofit. Right. So like, I feel like a lot of smaller nonprofits, people learn how to be grant writers because they work there and they need money.
Yeah.
So then you get some grants under your belt, then you can take that knowledge and go to a larger organization, be like, hey, I've acquired a bunch of money. Right. But to just kind of hang your sign outside and be like, I'm a grant writer. No one's hiring that person. So, cause they're not going to teach you how to be a grant writer. So I like went to this like large charter school. I was like, hey, I would love to be on your development team. They're like, we cannot teach you how to do this. What else can you do? I was like, well, I have a background in operations and education. And so I joined their team as like, I think like their 3rd or 4th hire for their operations department at the time. They had hired the COO like the week before. And I got to build my department. So
That's cool. That's fun.
it's like cool. It's like kind of the best thing for someone who's like super entrepreneurial and doesn't like rules, right? Which is like me. Where it's like, yeah, build your team, build it out, do what you want. Had an awesome time there. Hit the ceiling and started looking at what else I wanted to do. And public speaking and training was kind of my next thing. And that's eventually how I met you. And then when it came time for me to like leave that job, or I was like, hey, there's nothing left for me to build here, I was like, I think I just want to be a coach. I think I just want to train people and work with people one-on-one all the time and watch when like that light comes on in someone and they figure out that like they're not valuing themselves, or they figure out that like all they have to do is like open their mouth and speak and magic's going to happen, you know? And so that's when I started my coaching practice. That was 3.5 years ago. And so that's where I am now. But I feel like everything that I experienced along the way has been in service of the exact place that I am right now. Right. Like, yeah. Which is funny now, because I get a lot of people who reach out to me on LinkedIn asking about, how do I get into training? I want to be in training and development. I'm like, it wasn't necessarily intentional. You just like be the person who cares about things. And that tends to show up in certain roles, in certain areas, in certain industries. And that's where you end up finding yourself. So yeah.
Awesome. So 2 quick follow-up questions.
Yeah.
One, what kind of people do you coach? Like if people are listening, they're looking for a coach, like who's an ideal client for Marie?
Yeah. So ideal client for me is a woman of color, probably between the ages of 30 and 45, who's been climbing the ladder and is now looking for an entrepreneurial shift. So most of my clients are thought leaders, people with big ideas in rooms that are too small for them, and are looking
That's cool.
Just straight off the dome. Sometimes I have moments.
Oh, I love that.
And I help them in that transition and actually like putting together not just the strategy and the plan to transition into entrepreneurship, but also a lot of the mindset pieces, belief in self, so that it sticks, right? There's something I think especially debilitating about making the jump and then a year later having to go back. So I help people with that transition. I also still do a lot of like public speaking coaching. And interestingly, they actually go hand in hand as you're transitioning, finding your voice, learning how to use it, telling your story, getting in touch with your why, all of that, which comes across in storytelling and how you present your ideas. So those are my 2 main areas, public speaking and entrepreneurial transition.
Nice. And we'll, at the end of the episode, we'll definitely talk about how people can find you, connect with you, and learn about what you do. So this is a good example where I love doing this podcast, because Marie and I have spent, probably 150 hours like in the same space this year. And I just learned a ton about Marie. So either you don't like to share yourself, which might be a part of it, or it's probably a combination of like, you don't like talking about yourself. Another thing I think you have in common, we don't really share the things we're actually up to that well.
Yeah.
Things that we're actually doing well. And also, I think your journey is super cool. And like, like it feels to me like everything you've done has gotten you to like this point where you've got this thriving coaching practice. You're serving the people you want to serve. And it might probably not possible if you would have kind of skipped some of the steps along the way and learned about yourself and learned about what you like, what you don't like.
Yeah. Which is so interesting that you say that. I remember when I was graduating from NYU and didn't really know what I was going to do next. Right. But I spoke to my older brother and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I got this English degree. People say I should be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. People are telling me I should just go to law school. Like, and it's interesting how we have kind of like all of these rote responses when someone finishes undergrad. Like, oh, well, just get an MBA or get a JD. Like, like that's like some small thing. Like, stop telling people to do that. All of you who are like, don't tell people to do that. But like, I spoke to my older brother and he was like, well, it doesn't really matter. Just like pick something. And if you don't like it, pick something else. It was like the best advice.
Yeah,
like, not sure what to do with your life, start living and you'll figure it out.
I love that. I think that's something that, fellow coaches you run into all the time, is the idea that like you have to have it all figured out before you try anything. And like this idea of like, well, I need to have it perfect before I start a podcast or I go out and be an entrepreneur. And yes, of course there's the money thing and the time thing, but like, just go try some stuff. And it's you're going to, and the person I interviewed yesterday, actually, we talked about the same thing of just like, over time, you're going to figure out what you don't like and stop doing the things you don't like. So if you
Right.
go work in a corporation and you hate it, go find a job that isn't in a big corporation and
Right.
go figure out, and there's never going to be anything perfect, but like stop doing the things you literally don't like doing because of the money or the time or whatever. Because there are people out there that are doing things that they love that you would likely love that are probably making as much or more money than you because they bring their skills and their joy to their work.
Right. Right. Which is, it's interesting because I think people get so caught up in like, well, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? And it, like the doing doesn't really matter that much.
That's right.
Like what you're doing. It's like, well, what are you getting out of it on the other side? Right. Like, and it's interesting because as coaches, we're always like, oh, live your life by design, be intentional, be on purpose. But like the thing that's on purpose isn't like the specific action steps on purpose so much as like the reason is on purpose. Right.
Right. No, it's like, it's your commitments, not your go and apply for this one program and do this one specific way. And if you do it this one specific way, cause like, it's like I do improv. It's like improv. You say something and I have no idea what Marie's going to say. And it's kind of how life works. You have no idea how it's going to go. And you can't actually plan it all out because you're just one small piece of like this massive machine. Right. So like control what you want. And when you're clear, to me, like when you're clear on your commitments, that's what you can control. It's like, what am I actually committed to? What do I want? And then like start doing those things. And like, I think most of the time, at least my experience from my life has been since I've actually ingested that, which has been fairly recently, it kind of comes together almost like more quickly. The faster you do the things and try the things, the faster you get to that process of like, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing. Cause this is the thing that just feels like in my wheelhouse.
Right.
That's super cool.
But it's like getting through enough of the trial and error process to actually find the thing versus like, oh, I'm so scared, let me not try anything. Well, then you're never going to figure it out.
Right. You see.
Yeah.
What if I would have, what if I could have, what if I did, but I never did. So then I feel like a Dr. Seuss now, like a Dr. Seuss.
Oh my God. You should write a children's book.
Writing is like the idea of writing grants for a living might be one of the worst jobs on the planet for me. Like that just sounds.
No, it's amazing. No. Like writing something that causes someone to write you a check. That's like, come on.
I like to sell people stuff that has them write me checks. I don't want to write anything for it though. I want to like talk to them and like do PowerPoints for them.
PowerPoint. Oh my God.
Marie, the cool stuff, the technical presentations to get them convinced they need to buy this piece of software. That's the exciting stuff, not the writing.
Not the writing. It's all in the words, man.
All in the words. It's all in the doing, not the being.
Yeah.
So transitioning a little bit, this is the part of the show where you get to ask me anything and I will answer it. I mean, yes, you could ask me certain things I might punt, but most likely I will answer it. I generally answer it. So anything come to mind that you want to ask me about that I can answer for the audience here on the show today?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm curious about the Midwestern niceness. And if that's a thing and how it shows up in your life.
Oh, I love this topic. Oh my God, I love this topic. First of all, I'm going to say, oh yeah, you betcha. It's a real thing, you know. Yeah. So the culture that I grew up in, so I grew up, my parents are from Kansas. My grandparents are from Kansas. Amazing people, right? Like good heartland Midwestern values. And my parents moved to Minnesota. My dad got a job there when I was like 6 months old. So I was in Minnesota since basically like 6 months old to 27 years old. Mm. So there's a term called Minnesota nice. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. What that means is, you know how in New York, people will kind of tell you how they feel a lot? And they do it with like a lot of times, like no malice. They're just kind of like, hey, Marie, like, I think this thing you're doing kind of stinks. Mm-hmm. The Midwestern nice is kind of the opposite. So, and this is the way I see it, in my experience of it. Midwestern nice is you don't actually like people that much, but you have to be nice because it's a very religious community. It's very, Minnesota's very Swedish, very Lutheran. And the idea is that you don't need anything for yourself. You're good, which I think in a way you probably appreciate. Like, I'm good.
Wow.
I don't need you to see me. I don't need to be brag. Like, there's no bragging over here. I'm good. And I don't need anything from anybody. But the minute somebody else asks you for help, you're at their side. Like, and that's a very cultural thing. And I think So my wife's mom and grandparents are from Norway, and Norwegians are the same. It's a very Scandinavian thing, is like you rush to the aid of others, but you don't need anything for yourself. Like you put everybody else before yourself. So I think what Minnesota Nice, the way I see it, is you have this idea that you take care of everybody else, even when you don't necessarily like them, or like you don't actually align with them. So looking back now, you know, sometimes you'll have, like, I feel like my friends in New York, like, I really, really like, and I have a lot in common with them generally, and we just have like good time together. In Minnesota, like looking back, and it's been a while, but I even have friends who like, and this is not like still my best friends, if you guys listen to this, like still good friends, but there are people you'd be friends with where you're like, why am I friends with you? It's like, because I should, because I'm nice, because, so to answer the like Minnesota nice Midwestern thing, absolutely. How it shows up for me is people pleasing. So the idea, like, don't hurt anybody's feelings. Like, I have strong opinions, you know, like you and I, like, I have strong opinions. I'm very judgmental. Sometimes I'll let it fly. Yeah, no. I'm just pure nice guy all the time. So the idea that hurting people's feelings is like not a thing you do. And the difference that I've realized since living in New York, it'll be 15 years in March, is that it's like what we're learning to do, and what you're probably coming from California and then New York, you're much better at, is like, let's just have an empowered conversation. Let me just tell you, like, I'm not telling you you're a bad person. Like, it's almost like the idea that, like, if I tell anybody something that I don't like about them or what they're doing, I'm actually like calling their baby ugly. Like, it's like you just don't confront. So this shows up for a lot in, I would say, like, the opposite, like holiday dinners in the Midwest, is the opposite of like a Jewish or Italian dinner that you'd see on like a television show, where like people are like flying at each other, like lots of, you know, like drinking and like talking, and you're like, you know, like, aunt whatever, like, you were this to me and they were this to me, and everybody's like kind of going at each other, but it's out of a place of love, and like, let's just like bond over like tension. The way I grew up, not necessarily just my family, I think my family is actually good communicators, but just the general culture is, you don't bond over tension and angst on each other. You bond over like being nice to each other. And when you're not nice to each other, you end up in this place of like, they're mean or they're not supportive. And you also never ask for help. Like never ask for help. Because if you do, that means something about you, and you should be resilient to be able to do it on your own. So I don't know, that's a long-winded answer to the question, but I want to stop and see if you.
That's like,
you want to dig in. Yeah.
One, that's fascinating, because there's like, that's how you show up. Like, nothing to see over here. Let me help everybody else. Which in a lot of ways, I feel like empowers like a lot of your relationships, where you show up as like this really loyal friend.
Very loyal. Yeah. The other thing with Midwestern culture, I'm extremely loyal. Like, that is a thing that I learned from my family that I think is a positive thing about. There's a lot of positive things about growing up in the Midwest. One of them is loyalty is one of the greatest things. Like, you are loyal to your friends, you're loyal to your family, you're loyal to your employers a lot. Like, at least when I was working, so you end up a lot of people end up staying in jobs for too long. Maybe that's changed now, but for me, it was like the idea, like, you don't go to a job and then decide you don't like it and leave. Like, you're like, oh, I owe this employer something. So
yeah, but that's the first thing that came to me, is like, oh, I totally see it. But the other thing that I find really interesting is like knowing you as someone who works in the tech space. And I feel like, especially for tech companies that are moving very fast, it's all about like disruption, and the idea that like, it's not okay to like disagree, or to like the idea of like where the tension sits in that. Because I feel like a lot of what's great about disruptive spaces is like, we drive up the tension.
Yeah.
Right. We look for that and like dig into it. So I'm really curious, like, how that plays for you as someone who is like in a lot of tech spaces.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. Like, I think, you know, moving here almost 15 years ago, spending time in more like the New York tech scene over the last 5 years, and then the San Francisco tech scene, like, it's an in-process thing for me. Like, I've become much more bold in like just saying my piece, but I still, my default, like we all have our defaults. My default is to like, let's make sure I'm likable and everybody is having a good time. It's the thing we've talked about, like my winning strategy. One of my winning strategies, like before a conflict arises, like insert myself and like make everybody feel good so that like nobody has conflicts. And a breakthrough for me this year has actually been, and you may or may not know this, but like there's been that's happened multiple times with teammates where I'm like, I'm out. Like, my natural imposition be like, this person's talking to me and this person's talking to me, and I'm like, I'm out. figure it out, which is not natural for me. My natural is like, hey, let me broker. I'm like a broker. Like, let me broker a deal. I'm a mediator. And I've actually stepped away from doing that, specifically the month when Olya and I ran a little mini team game.
Yeah.
There was many times where I told Olya, I'm like, oh, we could step in here. I'm like, but I'm actually not going to. And I want to. Like, it's natural for me to step in and make people feel good. I'm like, no, I'll figure it out. So I think that's actually helped me in my business career and like with my sales advisory business, seeing that now, just like you need the tension. The thing with the Midwest thing, to wrap all this up, is like tension is bad. Like, you don't want the tension. You want to like each other. You just want to have fun. And I'm really, the tension is actually really good. My dad is really good at this, of allowing like the natural tension to happen so you can grow from it.
Right.
But it's challenging. And that's just not the way I grew up. I also grew up Lutheran. Lutherans are very, like, generally very nice. It's a very nice religion. You know, you have your potlucks at church and you go into Sunday school and everybody is trying to help each other and all that. So for me, this is like the constant, like we all have like one of my battles is the constant, like, being true, because some of that about me is true. I am very loyal. I am generally a pretty nice person. Like, I do really like people, but also like, is this serving you by being this nice? So that's a great question. I'm glad I've never talked about that before on the show. So I'm really glad you asked me.
Yeah. It's just so interesting. Oh, we're going to have to talk about this more probably at another time, because I have so many more questions about it. It's just, I feel like this fascinating.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Especially from you, like pure bi-coastal, right? You're like flyover country, don't know anything about it. You've traveled there for work, but you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what that's like.
I don't do the middle. I don't do the middle at all.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like, so like the Midwestern thing for me is like when I go to California or New York and people are talking about what they make. And I'm like, what? Like, this is not, no, what? No, you don't talk about money. That's not a thing you do. That's terrible. But people are like, oh yeah, last year I made this. And I'm like, what? No, you don't talk about money. That's not a thing. Like, no, you just don't.
Yeah. Interesting.
Culture.
Yeah.
Culture.
Fascinating.
And the other thing with Minnesota, at least the high school I went to, you asked about the kind of school I went to. I graduated in a big high school. I think we had 550 students, one Jewish kid, one black kid, 548 white people. And of those 548 white people in my class, if that's the number, which seems about right, my guess is that somewhere between 450 and 500 of them still live in the Twin Cities somewhere. And of those, maybe half probably live like within the 3 or 4 towns from where I was from. I'm
sorry, that's like crazy to me.
Yeah, like, but that goes back to like community and loyalty and people as you live by your parents. I know you don't live by your parents either. Like we don't either. That's a thing, is like you're loyal and you're together and you go to church together and like you have all that family dynamics and family community.
Right.
Yeah. It's a very different culture.
Yeah. Just even like the idea of like community, like, I grew up in a high school. I don't even remember how many kids were in my high school, but like, I think there were like 500 kids in my graduating class. I could count the African-American students on like 2 hands. Because I grew up in California, like in like the Northern California Bay Area. So most of my school was like Asian, East Indian kids.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right. Like Silicon Valley. It looked like Silicon Valley.
So you had Dinesh. You had Jing Yang.
But even to this day, it's just so completely different. Like, and I look at like my friend circle now, like very much like multicultural, because that's what I'm used to. But also like if I look at like kids I went to high school or even college with, everyone's dispersed. And largely like if you didn't stay on the West Coast, like I grew up in San Jose, so a lot of people ended up in San Francisco, in that area. Yeah. They work in tech, or they're here, they're in New York, they're in New Jersey. Yeah. Like very few people land in the middle, or if they do, it's going to be at a major metropolitan area like Chicago, right? Like,
right.
Yeah. But
it's also the socioeconomic aspect. I grew up like my dad was a city manager, very well educated, very smart. My mom, very smart as well, but they decided together that they would stay home with us until my mom was home until I was 18. So we were single income family as well. So could my mom have gone out and worked and made money? Yeah. So it's just also a socioeconomic thing. Yeah, totally different. Yeah. Just a different world.
Oh, that's so crazy. That's so interesting. Like my dad worked in tech, made like a buttload of money, but like my mom, and both of them, my mom's an immigrant. She came here from Jamaica when she was like in her 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so she didn't get a college degree until after, my two older siblings were like out of the house. Like she got her degree late and then was raising me and my younger brother and then chose to go and get a job. So we were a 2 income household once all of the kids were like old enough to like walk home by themselves.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yep. That was not my thing.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to catch up on this more.
Yeah.
We might have to do a whole episode on Midwestern culture, and maybe
I'm so,
maybe I'll get a panel on. Maybe I'll do a
you should
panel.
totally do a panel. This is fascinating.
No, it is. I'm thinking like we
Like,
can have you, we can have Emily, because she's also Midwestern, Pittsburgh,
yeah.
myself, maybe Devin's from Ohio.
Yeah.
My wife can come on, and then we can get like, a couple people who grew up out here. And
Yeah.
it'll be fun. That'd be really fun. We'll do a panel podcast. That'd be super cool.
That would be super cool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for the question. You made me think about a lot of things because it's just like inherent in me. It's just like my family. It's my origin story. So I don't actually think about it that much.
Yeah.
So thank you for helping me reflect on that. That was really good. So we've got time for a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have time for a couple more questions?
I do have time for a couple more questions.
All right. So now you put me on the hot seat. I'm going to put you back on the hot seat. Just
here we go.
Bit. Yeah, exactly. What's it like growing up in California with parents who make money? No, I'm kidding. Not the question. So Marie, what's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
Oh, that I'm mean. I'm a mean person.
How do you compensate?
Oh, interesting. Well, how do I compensate? Now I think of like very specific things like, well, in my emails, after I say the thing, I'll go back to the top and add the niceties. Like, just because, I know myself to be like a very direct person, a very direct communicator. So I'm very conscious of that and think about like the way that I phrase things, the way that I communicate things to people. So that hopefully like they're not taking it personally, which sometimes I feel like is a little bit of like self-censoring at times, just for the sake of others, so that they don't think that I'm mean. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a little bit of that. Like sometimes I don't say the thing.
I have a
Yeah.
I just have a question. Yeah, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Are you mean?
No, I'm not mean.
I don't think you're mean.
I can be mean, but I'm not.
I can see where people that are not used to the direct talk would think that it's mean, but I think you're a good example of just like, you just call it like it is. It's like what we're talking about. Like you would be mean in Minnesota to a lot of people. You're like, oh, like this is this person. And she's like, knows she's got her voice and she just says what she sees. And people be like, oh no, like that's uncomfortable. There's tension there. No, this feels like there's conflict about to happen. No.
Like, well, but I think a lot of it has to do with like your relationship to conflict. Like I remember like Oli and I had a thing a couple of months ago, and in her view, she was like, oh yeah, we had an argument. I was like, we had a conversation.
Yeah.
But very different what lands as an argument to some people.
Yeah. And then you guys hugged it out and it was all good. And then she had some feelings and you had a little bit of feelings and it's all good.
Yeah. And then I stuffed my feelings way down deep and then we continued.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I totally appreciate that and advocate for that process because it's the same thing I do. It's amazing.
Yeah. Stuff.
And then we go out and do a bunch of really cool stuff. It's great.
Yeah. That's how we keep the universe in balance.
Exactly. So wrapping up for today, first I want to thank you for being on. It's been awesome to talk with you and I learned a ton about you. And like I said, we spent a ton of time together this year and I'm sure we will continue to spend a ton of time together, but really fun to learn about you. So from our conversation today, is there anything else that's come up that you wanted to go back on that you'd like to share with the audience at this point?
Oh, that's interesting. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I mean, nothing that we can like wrap up in the next couple of minutes.
Okay. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Great. So first of all, I will put all this in the show notes as well, but if you want to let the audience know, where can they find you if they want to get connected with you, learn more about your coaching, your public speaking training, what it means to sell annuities or buy some annuities. If they want some good straight talk, whatever, all the things that you offer. Where can they find you? All the things.
All the things on my website, mariedeveaux.com. You can pop in, get a virtual coffee with me. We can chat it out. That's the best way.
And isn't on your forms like, do you want me to be mean to you or not? And they have to like check a box.
It's not an option. You just get what you get and you don't get upset. Also, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Again, Marie Deveaux.
Sure.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on, all the places where the social people are.
All the stuff. Yeah. The social stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
Good. So last thing, leave us with some words of wisdom. And these words of wisdom, they have to fit on like, I don't know, like a Post-it note or something you can put on your computer desktop. So don't write us a grant proposal here.
Oh,
I'm just looking for drop us some Marie wisdom and make it fit on a Post-it note. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Wisdom on a Post-it note. Well, I can think of a lot of other people's words of wisdom, so I'm trying not to.
That's great. No,
Yeah.
Hey, whatever, it's great.
Well, something that comes to mind just in the nature of this conversation is you can't be great until you're good, and you can't be good until you're bad. And before you're bad, you have to try.
I love that. I love that because that's my philosophy as well. So the whole thing of practice equals production.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to be good when you start at anything.
Right. It's like
awesome, Marie.
The first time, just prepare for it to be terrible, and then you can get that one out the way.
Right. As opposed to it's going to be terrible, so I'm just actually never going to do it. So I'm never going to try that thing. So instead, I get to play small and never actually give it a try.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Marie, for being on today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, this was fun.
We'll be seeing each other soon.
We definitely will.
Bye. See you later. Bye.